What's the difference between messaging and positioning? Well, today you're going to hear how we define this at the Joyful Business Revolution and some scenarios or phrases that you might be seeing and hearing in your business so you can figure out what needs to be fixed.
Welcome to the Grow Your Business for Good show. This is a place where coaches and consultants gather so you can learn how to lead a world-class business that does not tax your time, your energy, or your financial resources. We are your hosts, M. Shannon Hernandez
and Amy Hager of the Joyful Business Revolution. And our number one goal is to bring you clarity and insight on how to grow your business for good. You know what? I kind of feel like we are in the Wizard of Oz, right? And we're singing lions and tigers and bears. Oh my!
Oh my!
Right? But instead, we're going to be talking about the difference of positioning and messaging. And it can be this really scary thing that keeps people from making progress in their business. Or it could be some sweet and cuddly friends that are going to help you further down that yellow brick road. And so I want to dive into definitions first, Shannon. Why don't you kick this off for us?
All right. So what is messaging in your marketing? Okay. Messaging is how you talk about what you do and how you solve your clients' problems. It should be the lens for all of your marketing efforts, guiding and narrowing down your approach. And even though getting your messaging right can be a lot of work, the concept is quite simple. Let's review that again. Messaging is what you do and how you solve your clients' problems. Okay. So what is positioning when it comes to your marketing? Positioning focuses on how your products and services differ from your competitors or anything else in the market. In other words, it's the thing that makes you stand out. And because your positioning directly affects how you talk about your business, it's an integral part of your messaging. There's plenty of positioning books on the market. However, most seem to be targeted to mid-size and enterprise level businesses. So unless your service is related to positioning or messaging, you're intensely interested in the material, reading them are not going to help you get towards your goals. With that in mind, I want to offer a word of advice as we dive in today. I might be spicy Shannon today. Don't let defining your positioning and messaging become a big, fat distraction. That's what I have to say about that. All right. You have to remember that your messaging and your positioning is so much more about your customer than yourself. Okay. That's where a lot of people get things wrong. If you've ever looked on social media and it's person after person with their face and like, I just got back from so-and-so. I just did this. I just did this. I can help you do this. They are not positioning the services and the results and what makes their product different. And it's probably why it annoys the shit out of you when you see it. Okay. So bring in your joy, reflect your brand voice. However, you need to speak to your audience needs. And so the question becomes, do I have a positioning problem or do I have a messaging problem? So Amy, let's talk over those scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to dive into some symptoms and some things maybe that you're seeing or that you're hearing in your business. And then we're going to decide if it's messaging or positioning and kind of talk through that a little bit. And so the first one that we commonly hear from successful business owners that feel like they're struggling, though, they know they have a good offer. They know that they can show up in their expertise and that they can create transformation and great results. But the symptom is people don't know what you do or people know what you do. So they know that you're a health coach or transformation coach or marketing coach, but they end up not buying from you. They don't buy it from you. And a lot of times people really, really get so stuck that this has to be a messaging problem, that it's not talking to my ideal people, that it's too vague. But to be honest, this can be a combo of messaging and positioning. So when it's both, there's a lot more factors to kind of think through. And so I want to dive into a few of them. So the first one here is they're not seeing the value that you're bringing. And so that could be that your messaging doesn't show your audience why this product is going to make their lives bigger and better, right? They don't
Absolutely. Bigger and
understand
better.
at all. Why is this going to make my life better? You're not answering that question in the messaging that you're putting out there. Just like Shannon said, if you're out there talking and saying, oh, I just got back from my VIP day in Fiji, or I just got done enrolling 6 new clients, you're not allowing your future clients to understand why you make their lives better. The fear of missing out is not going to help you in your messaging here. And so you're not marketing to the right audience can be another factor here, or maybe not even on the right channels. So therefore they're not going to see your value. And if you're not nurturing them enough, and if you're not showing up consistency, they also are not going to see that value. And so if you are just showing up sporadically, once on a blue moon, you get an exciting thing to do an Instagram reel, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to go live on Facebook, and well, maybe next week I'm going to post on LinkedIn. You really got to get on the right channel where you can show up consistently, and then make sure that you have that right audience following you. And I think another place where people don't really see value is when you're not when your offer does not stand out, it's really more of that positioning problem.
Yes. And just listening to this, you're probably thinking like, what the actual hell? This shit's confusing. It is confusing.
Yeah.
It is confusing, right? But this is why people partner with us, because you might be thinking it's a messaging problem, but I see it's a positioning problem. Or you haven't even thought about positioning, or it's a problem of both.
Yeah.
Okay. So Amy, let's just do a real fun example for a minute. Okay.
Good.
Let's talk about a client, for example. All right. I'm just going to throw one out. Alan. Okay. Alan is a speaking coach and a presentation coach. All right. That is who he is. It doesn't talk about the problem he solves. All right. So let's break it down. Amy, you know Alan well enough. What is the problem he solves for his clients?
For those who have done speaking before and want to next level their speaking. So he's not going to teach you how to get on a stage if you've never spoken before. You definitely have done speeches before, but you know there's room for improvement, but you're just not for sure how.
Okay, great. So Alan had success with this messaging for about a year. Then things fell off drastically. By the way, this is normal. It happens. You have to be listening to your market. And I said to Alan, what if we niched a little more and we positioned, okay, not a messaging, a positioning, you as a TEDx coach?
Right.
Do you know, Amy, in 3 weeks, he's sold out his entire program. It starts Thursday.
Right.
We didn't change the audience. We didn't change his platform. We didn't change his messaging. We changed the positioning of the offer. Come to TEDx Summer School is actually what we did. Okay. So this is a great example for you to think about. And you have to be able to discern, is this an audience problem? Is this an offer problem? Is this a message problem? Or is this a positioning problem? Okay.
Right.
Your audience is going to be confused if you talk about your offers one way and the sales page or the proposal send a different message. they're not going to understand what they're buying. There's going to be a disconnect there. Okay. You also can confuse your audience if you talk about too many vastly different offers instead of one or two themes or categories consistently. This is why we help you in previous episodes think about your brand pillars, right? What are the 3 things you're going to be talking about consistently? Okay. So always, always talk to your audience, get their feedback. Okay. I have a client right now, Carrie. I'm actually sending her to her email with 3 questions. She emailed it out yesterday because she cannot land on yet what it is that her people want. She's just like really like pulling shit out of thin air.
Mm.
And you can only do that so long before you're discouraged. So how do you refine it? You go do a survey, you go ask your audience, you reach out to 5 people on your LinkedIn newsletter, you set up a call with them. You hear and you listen for what they're saying to you, and you ask them where they're stuck, confused, stalled, whatever it is. And then we look at that data and we figure out, is this a messaging or a positioning problem? All right, so that's 2 very specific examples there. All right, Amy, there's another symptom that shows up. Refund requests, chargebacks, bad reviews. Oh my God, if you've ever been there, it is horrible. Okay,
Right.
Amy, so what do we think is going on here? Messaging or positioning?
It's definitely going to be a positioning problem. So this one is pretty clear. I'm going to say black and white. And there's really a gap between what is expected and what's actually being delivered. And so when you have one of these scenarios happen, the request for refund or a chargeback or a bad review, ask for feedback why their experience was bad. And you want to approach this positively. You want to thank them for their time. And you absolutely want to take their feedback into consideration, even if their feedback was maybe a little harsh for the words they were using, right? And when you take that into consideration, and really think through what they're saying and think through the onboarding process maybe that you have. If you look at the email sequence that you're sending when someone registers for an event or registers to work with you and things aren't clear or it's overwhelming or it's very confusing, the thing that we have to remember is that the expectation and the reality. We live in our businesses day in and day out, and sometimes it's hard for us to see the reality that someone else actually sees when they're experiencing us or our product or our platform for the first time. And, when you think about the consideration of their feedback, there may be a lot of things that you aren't going to need to take into consideration. You can take it with a grain of salt. Again, they are upset. They feel like, they've been misled. And so if you can think of how to make what you're currently offering 10% better. And when you see people when you are taking those steps to really address the problems, you can really create more of that positive feeling and create more brand loyalty. And Shannon, I think one of the better stories that we have is a story of our own in our Content Personality Club. I think it was at the beginning of this year, we got really, really clear we weren't focusing enough in the club on email marketing. And when we went to our students and said, if we focus a little bit more on email marketing in our club with the messaging, of course, you're going to be able to use the messaging in social media and in speaking engagements and in sales calls and on your landing pages. But if we put our focus on email marketing here so that you all can build stronger relationships with your email list, how will that work for you all? And they felt overarching, all of them were like, yes, this makes sense. We see this. And so we didn't have anybody come back and say, that's it, I'm out. You guys changed the game plan. I don't believe in email, because our messaging attracts people who believe in email, so that was good. But there was a shift in the positioning of how we were executing what we offered. And it's worked really, really well for us. But it was really having that conversation, explaining the decision and explaining ourselves, and then making sure that that's reflected on the front end. So when anybody else comes into our content personality club, they know this is their email marketing mentorship. And that's where they're going to get help with their email marketing and their messaging.
I love it. All right, let's do another one. A symptom. How many of you listening get sales calls consistently booked with the wrong people?
Mhm.
It is frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, is it a messaging problem or a positioning problem? Primarily, this is a positioning problem. All right, and what's happening under the surface is people don't understand what you do or how you can work with them. It might sound good what you're saying in your messaging, but they're not understanding how you're different and how you can help them achieve their goals. Okay. It could be a big picture positioning problem that you need to address with significant changes on your site, on your social media. It could be a series, a matter of minor tweaks to what it is that you're doing. Okay. But you have to find out how they're finding you. That's a key question to ask, and start taking steps to address the narrative wherever they're finding you, right? So if they've come through LinkedIn and they say, oh, I saw these posts on LinkedIn, I thought this is what you did. That is golden information to go back and look at those through a new lens and say, why do they think this is what I did? What I do to help people? Okay. I had a client once, Nina, great example. For the life of her, before she came to me, she could not get the right people on sales calls.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, Nina is brilliant at LinkedIn video strategy. But Nina was talking about things like your lighting, your camera, your scripting. So naturally, people were wanting to come to her to have them coach them on their lighting, their camera, their scripting. And she's like, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I want to help people with their LinkedIn video strategy. And I said, quit talking about all the tech that you're obsessed with.
Yeah.
Start talking and positioning what it means to have a LinkedIn video strategy. So we got to work and we did that, turned our entire business around, which is so fun.
Yeah.
All right, Amy, here, what's another one we can dive into, a symptom?
Yeah. So when you're getting poor quality referrals, and when you really think through that, it's probably going to be a messaging problem. And really, it could just be that the person who is referring to you really just doesn't understand what you do, and how they can actually support you with the referrals. And so when you get one of these scenarios, reach out to the person who referred and say something along the lines of, thank you so much for sending Jessica to me. We had a beautiful conversation, but, and then give the reason why she wasn't ideal. So maybe in our scenario, it would be, but she just started her business and she doesn't even have an offer put together yet. And I work best with people who have an offer that has repeat clients, that those clients are referring new clients, and that's when they're ready for their marketing. And so by explaining why this wasn't a good referral and what would be a better referral next time, you're going to really help that referral partner or that collaborator better understand who to be sending you. And, when we do get someone who isn't right for us right now, I go through my Rolodex. And if it's someone who needs an offer, I know I can refer them to someone else. If it's, someone who is looking for more systems and operation things, I can send them somewhere else. And So I keep that Rolodex as well. And so I would expect that any of our referral partners, if I did send someone along that isn't the right fit, that they would say the same thing. Thank me for the effort and for sending. Here's why it didn't work out so that I can better understand the next time.
I
So
love that.
I think we have one more symptom,
Yeah.
and it's probably one of my favorites.
Low email open rates and or click rates.
Oof.
All right, everyone, do you think it's a messaging problem or a positioning problem? It's probably messaging.
Yeah.
All right, now what's going on here, right? What you're sharing is no longer what your audience is interested in. Maybe they joined your list for a freebie and they don't have the time or energy to stay in touch. Maybe your calls to action are not compelling enough. Maybe your subject lines suck. I mean, there's so much that could go on in one email. All right, which is where my joy comes in, as you can hear it. All right, so what's the solution? Okay. One of the solutions is to review your metrics and call the people who aren't engaged from your list. All right. And there's a way to do that. So I just met with a new client today. Her name's Deb. And she said to me, you know, she took a break from her coaching for a while. She hasn't emailed her list in over a year.
Oh, wow.
And that told me some things right there. Like, we can't just start talking about this program that she wants to run again in October. I need to strategically get in there with her, and we need to get some data and get some information. It's been a year, but mainly we need a reactivation campaign, right? We need to see who's still engaged. We need to tell them what she's talking about. We need to remind them who she is. And by the way, no shame for any of this. It happened. She got busy with life, right?
Right.
But there's ways to reactivate your email list, who aren't engaged. And then there's very kind ways to remove them if they're not engaging. Okay. Of course, there's other signs and symptoms that your messaging and positioning may be off. However, if you're looking for a starting point, this gives you several ideas and fixes for the symptoms that we've covered today. Okay. So, Amy, we got something fun for the people this season, right? If you are feeling like you have an offer that's working well, but it's not selling, do we need to dive into your messaging, or do we need to dive into your positioning, or do we need to dive into both? Well, this is what we do in our email messaging and marketing mentorship program. We call this the club, or the Content Personality Club. And because you have listened to this episode, you can use the code podcast500, all caps, podcast500, to receive a discount on your enrollment at contentpersonalityclub.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope to see you in the club, and I hope to see you in our next episode, where we are going to dive into brand messaging and why you might just be wasting too much time on figuring out your USP and UVP. And if you don't know what those stand for, you definitely want to tune in. And we're really going to focus on what you could be doing instead that's actually going to move things forward. So it could be a whole new world of marketing in our next podcast episode. So we'll see you then. Bye.
Adios.